Well, happy Friday, everyone. Happy Lionsgate. We are in the Lionsgate's portal. If you guys are familiar with that in astrology, this is the strongest manifestation time that humans can possess right now. The veil between the spiritual world and the uh, physical world is very thin. So if you guys are interested in manifesting, this is the time to do it. Let me see. Okay, we're good. All right, guys, I'm back. This is episode 23. I'm Al, your host. I will be hosting you guys today on this episode. And as you guys saw in the beginning of this episode, this is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We are going to be covering a lot of material that is surrounding the trial of Ma'at, and then there's going to be a lot of prefacing on how the Egyptians even got to talk about the trial of life when we drop this physical body. And I keep meaning to say this. The music I'm starting to play in the beginning of the episode is called A Boat on the Ocean. And I thought that was very beautiful piano playing. Not only signifies what this podcast is about is, setting people adrift into their own oceans, but it's getting me also the Go Voyager, the Now Voyager to set sail and keep sailing into uncharted waters. So it's gonna be my new theme music. It's just gonna keep playing throughout this season. So we're going to continue on with new stuff. That being said, everyone, like I said, this is episode 23. Like I said, I'm reviewing part of the book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But more importantly, this episode is really called Coming Forth by Day. And we are going to dive into why that is called Coming Forth by Day. And I did in my last episode. Sorry, guys. Last episode was a month ago. Let's talk before I get into the work today. It has been a month, and there's a few reasons why it's been a month. I really wanted everyone to digest those 3 hours of what I talked about, and hopefully you guys can see that everything I just talked about a month ago is happening right now. Meaning, we're seeing the 3D world crumbling. We're seeing more strife around the world, or we're seeing more people getting heated more often, people getting triggered, people are passing left and right. So, not to say that, that was the precursor for what was going on. It's just something in my intuition that said, Al, we need to talk about this. And more people need to hear about the reality of what's going on. And what's going on is there's a shift in the realities, a shift in um, the physical and the spiritual realities is happening. If you guys like it or not, it's here. So I just wanted to prepare everyone for that, for this new reality that we're living in. And then secondly, I've been doing a lot of stuff. Just my personal life and, just finding inspiration for the show. Because I think I said in my previous episode, episode 22 that I already had all this written out, and I did, but I had a different feel, a different vibration to the show, and that vibration changed. So what you guys are getting today is something new that came out of my imagination, came out of me. It came out of my inner dweller, which came into my physical mind, and I was able to assemble this episode. So, without further ado, guys, there's a lot to cover, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna try to keep my time clock under 3 hours. I don't think is going to be a long episode, possibly 2 hours, but I don't think we're gonna get to that 2 hour mark if I just stay on task. So, for everyone, let's say this to everyone: thank you for watching the episode. I think there were like 99 views, which is in my opinion a really good turnout for the information, which means that more and more people were able to reach this material and listen and just reflect, observe. Hopefully, you guys are a little more evolved after that 3 hour episode about the heart versus the feather. And this episode is a part two, but I titled it differently. So uh, the YouTube algorithms can promote it as a new episode and not continuation. So this is actually part two, but of the heart versus the feather. But today is what's it called? Going to be like I said, the continuation, but it's called Coming Forth by Day. And today's books we're going to cover is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We're going to get to why this is called that. Um, we're going to get to the Emerald Tablets, more Egyptian knowledge. I think I brought this book up before, but I'm now showing it now. And then I picked up a copy of the Holy Bible just for some of my listeners out there. I still do read the Bible, guys. It's not like I'm diving into this other ancient knowledge. But like I always say, guys, combining text, when you put text together and you put the scriptures together, do they all say the same thing? There's one God, there's a creator, and there's one knowledge. So that's why I always bring up different books when I'm doing my episodes. So let's continue on from there. Let's start talking about coming forth by day. And I'm going to start with a quote from the Emerald Tablets. And I'm really going to expand into this alchemist phrase that I keep saying, but we're going to get into the whole phrase. And it's going to lead into what we're about to talk about today. So the quote from the Emerald Tablet says, "As above, so below. So as within, so without. As the universe, so the soul." And that's the complete version of that quote is as above, meaning higher dimensions in your mind. That's another thing we haven't talked about. So below, meaning in your body or the lower dimensions. And then as within, meaning your dweller, your soul. And then so without, meaning your reality changes. And then as the universe, which is you, me, planets, stars, the universe out there, we're all the same. And it says, as the universe, so the soul, meaning the soul is eternal, the soul behaves in its own manner, and the soul also abides by different laws. This camera, every time I have something to say to you guys, things slow down. But with that being said, everyone, that is from Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, which is the thrice, the three times born. That is coming from Thoth. So you guys are probably wondering, why are we diving deeper into the Egyptian Book of the Dead? And I'm gonna say because my curiosity sparked. When I was doing the research for the show, I had a lot of questions, and I'll tell you guys some of the questions I had. The reason why I decided to make this a separate episode I my curiosity sparked, what is the trial? What is the Book of the Dead? Is it dark magic? Who is Ani? I have that question, and also have, what is the real story? Why was the scroll even written? Um, when was it written? Who was at the trial? We have that question. Okay, who was at the trial? What happens after the trial? What happens to a heavy heart? What happens to a light heart? What is duat? Why is there black and red ink in some of the inscriptions? What do the pretty hieroglyphs say? Because when you flip through the book, the scroll is actually really beautifully written and depicted scroll. And then, who was the scroll for? And why was it called the Book of the Dead? And then the last question is this scroll or book, is this the keys to the resurrection of a soul? And so that is where my inspiration came from with this episode 23. So today we will cover all of those questions, or we're going to attempt to cover some of those questions. Hopefully, it will change everyone's perspectives, or the listener's perspective of soul consciousness, um, and soul consciousness in its continuation after this physical vehicle drops away. And hopefully, it can reimagine, like I said, life after the physical body. There's a whole adventure that the soul takes. After I read this, I mean, I knew it before, but after reading the Book of the Dead, did I really understand that our life really does begin? This really is just a short dream compared to our astral life or our higher life. I'll say that. So, with all those questions, I actually bought the book. I bought the book and I actually read it cover to cover. Didn't skip a word. Every time there was a note or footing for me to reference, I went on ahead and read it because I really wanted to understand the material. I didn't want to have any questions. I didn't want any, you know, thing left on the table. Let's just say. Um, so that's where that came from. The reason why I decided to read the book, and it definitely changed my perspective on um, life after the physical body drops away. I mean, not to say that you know this happens to everyone, but it can give us an idea that we really are eternal beings. And once we drop this physical body, does the real life begin? My take from after reading the book is, what we do in this physical world will dictate how we're going to live in the astral realm after the physical body leaves. And like that trial always said, depending on how heavy or light your heart is, will you have a heavenly like experience, or you if you have a heavier heart, something else may go down. So again, guys, this physical stuff or this physical life takes you into the astral life, and your astral life is deeply impacted by what you do on this planet. So that is what I want you guys to take away from this whole Egyptian series, is that having more consciousness of yourself, having more consciousness of your soul, and what it's really here to do. And what it really is here to do is to expand, grow. So its astral star life can be uh, blissful, happy, and spending its time with God instead of having to come back through Earth School again and then try to do this all over again. So that is what I took away from the reading the Book of the Dead, is that, and hopefully you guys can understand that as well today. And also want to say about that is a lot of the tales in the book coincided with a lot of my out of body experiences that I've been having. I realized that it's not dark magic. Um, in my time, it was considered dark magic, or it was taught to me that it was dark magic when I started going through a lot of my Egyptian studies when I was trying to be a history teacher back in the day. But this reading this book changed my perspective. Is like it's not dark magic, and I actualized that there's a lot of similarities. Meaning, there's a lot of things in this scroll that is very similar to the Bible. We'll get into that and what that means with similarities. And I also want to say, everyone, a lot of the religions, again, were born out of this knowledge, out of Egypt, out of Kemet. So that's what I wanted to say about that. So to keep the theme of the show today, I'm gonna start the chapters with scrolls, just to keep it festive in the Egyptian manner. And then I also want to say there's 9 scrolls altogether, but we're going to only unlock 7 today, only because there's so much more to talk about after the trial ends that I don't want to keep you guys for 3 hours again. Again, I realize you guys don't like what's it called? Long show. So we're at 17 minutes. I'm gonna keep talking. So guess what, guys? 7 scrolls today to unlock. We've already unlocked 1. Now we have 6 more to go. We got through the introduction. So let's get to scroll number 2. And I'm going to start scroll number 2 with a quote from the Emerald Tablets. It says, "As a child had not the knowledge that come to ye, when ye became a man, compare ye cycles to man in his journey from birth to death, children in different stages of growth, yet all from one source, the wisdom, and all to the wisdom returns again." What does that mean? We all come down here with zero to no knowledge. That's just the way this physical world works for some reason. When we are born as a human being or a human, majority of what we remembered on the other side gets lost. And what Thoth was saying is uh, to recognize that you come here with knowing little to nothing, but through man's cycle, again, men and women, do we start to gain knowledge? And we go through different stages. So he's pretty much saying that even as grown adults, we're still children going through different stages of life. And depending on where we're at in those life cycles, can we start to realize that we come from one source and one wisdom, and we return to that wisdom? And as I always said, guys, the wisdom is God. That is the one true wisdom that we all return to. So doesn't matter what journey you had in this physical world with this physical avatar, what this quote is saying is you always return to one wisdom. And when you actualize that in your lifetime, does this knowledge become a part of you, and you pass into the astral realm with this knowledge, knowing that you learned all that you can learn, knowing that there's one source of knowledge, and that's God, Brahman, uh, the Supreme Lord, Allah, whatever we all want to call that energy. Is the same thing. When we drop the names, we all are drawn back to wisdom. And that's what that quote saying. So, scroll number 2 is covering the Pharaonic period. And the reason why I wanted to put history into the episode is because I don't want to assume that everyone knows Egyptian like physical history. Because if I just started with the trial, I was thinking none of this is going to make any sense. This is gonna be like, well, what is Al talking about? So scroll number 2 is just giving you guys a history lesson, a brief history lesson, because there's so much history with Egypt on how the Egyptians came about, how it all went down, and what it all meant to be an Egyptian, or Kemet, back in those days, back in the ancient period. So to start this off, everyone, got to think of Egypt as a growing child. Just like what Thoth just said, when the Egyptians really first started its culture, it had little to no culture. But when Thoth came around, he taught them the knowledge. So you can think of Egypt as a child, and it's a cyclical pattern of the way the stages of Egypt has grown. So that's why I did that quote. I know, I'm a bit of a nerd sometimes, but I want things to make sense. So Egypt has 3 distinct dynastic kingdoms, meaning Egypt as a unified state. If you guys don't know about ancient history, is there's a lower Egypt and an upper Egypt. And if you guys ever seen like Egyptian movies or you've seen Egyptian pictures, you see the double crowns. That's only because at one time there were two separate kingdoms in Egypt, and there was a time period where the two came together to form a unified centralized government, which combined Egyptian resources to form a centralized government. And a centralized government, um, they established the head of state, which is the pharaoh, which they established as a god as well. He was the head of the government, and the economy was mainly agriculture. And they established a religion centuries ago of what Egypt was going to be. And then, like I said, guys, the two Egyptian kingdoms of the Upper and Lower Egypt region. The Upper Egypt, you can think about like Aswan, by the Aswan Dam now, Luxor and Thebes. That is Upper Egypt. Lower Egypt, think about Memphis, Cairo, the Lower Delta. That is all the Lower Kingdom of Egypt. But like I said, when you combine the two kingdoms, was the Egyptians able to grow and prosper when they're unified? But when they were separated, uh, it was different culture. Let's say that it wasn't unified. And like I said, the pharaoh was established as a living god in the physical form. And then generations of the royal household ruled, meaning that because of one family could rule, it created multiple dynasties throughout the kingdom. And then there was a blending of religion and government, just like today, where there's a bit of a separation of government and religion. Back during the Pharaonic period, there was no distinction, it was all together. And the religion they established at that time was polytheism, meaning there was a pantheon or many gods. And then scroll number three. See, we're getting through the scrolls pretty fast today. Scroll number three, I wanted to start off with a quote from the Emerald Tablets. It says, knowledge frees the soul. Um, Free, let thine soul soar ever upward. Free from the bondage, uh, filters of the night, meaning the dark night of your physical body. Lift thine eye to the sun or God in the sky, the space above, and for thee to let it become a symbol of life. Meaning, when you free yourself from bondages of this physical world and you gaze your eyes towards the sky or up to the Aten or God, do you start to free yourself and you become more of a perfect aligned physical being? That's what that means, which is what we're going to move into with how Egypt started to become that golden shimmering culture that we see today. Um, let's start with the pre-dynastic kingdom, and this is ancient stuff, guys. Like we can say the pre-dynastic Egypt came between 3100 BC, before Christ, or before the Common Era, till about 2700 BC. So this was a time of when Egypt was forming its greatness. That's the way I could say how to remember this time period in Egypt is, the upper and lower kingdoms were fighting it out, but they realized that they must come together to form an empire. And when the two crowns came together, did Egypt start to grow and expand and start creating the culture that we see all over the uh, temple walls and throughout the land of Egypt or Kemet. So, like I said, guys, we're forming greatness, and during that pre-dynastic period, we saw an appearance of a king or a pharaoh. They changed it to pharaoh eventually, but it started off as a king. And then we saw the establishment of the pantheon or the or Parthenon of gods, which there's a lot of them, but the few principal ones I'm going to mention because it's very important to the episode. The principal gods are Ra, Horus, Isis, Anubis, Osiris, uh, Ma'at, the Aten, like we just talked about, Thoth, Nut, and Pharaoh, which is the living god. He was established in that realm. And also within pre-dynastic Egypt, the mastaba started, meaning that it was like this flat rectangular style um, tomb the pharaoh laid in, and then the pharaoh was below that. So if you guys saw like the temple building uh, documentaries, you see the step pyramid at Saqqara. You can kind of start to seeing that the pre-dynastic Egypt started them to start taking mastaba after mastaba after mastaba and stack it to make a pyramid. Now it wasn't perfect. They perfected it when they went to the Giza Plateau, but this, like again, guys, this is where the Egyptians were forming greatness. Was the pre-dynastic Egypt, and then that lasted for a while. Like I said, they fought it out, and they established a centralized king, which was, I believe, it was Memphis was the first capital of Egypt. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is from my history studies. And with the burial, the reason why I want to talk about this is because the mastaba with the burial was because the pharaoh was buried with these inscriptions, but it wasn't in the same form that it is in today. And we're going to get to that why it was. In the Old Kingdom, that was pretty much from, like I said, from 2700 to about 2100 BC. And think about this period as the Pyramid Age, meaning this is the time period where Egypt built a lot of its pyramids. And the Middle Kingdom, we had a bit of a break, was between 2055 to about 1650 BC. So that's a long time. Think about the Middle Kingdom as like a reunification, expansion into uh, Africa, such as Nubia and Ethiopia. Uh, Egypt started to shape itself as an African superpower in the east and in the south region of the continent. So this is where we get a lot of Nubian influence in Egyptian culture was during this time period, and also, like I said, some Ethiopian parts were also conquered by the Egyptians because they wanted access to the Red Sea or the Indian Ocean at the time. And then that was the Middle Kingdom, and then the New Kingdom. There was a bit of a break as well. There was an invading army, but the Egyptians kicked them out. So around 1550 to about 1070 BC, the New Kingdom ruled. So this is where we see Seti and Hatshepsut, and there's a few other the Ramesses. This is the kingdom you guys can think of as I'm talking about this today, and think about empire. This is Egyptians' golden empire age. This age took Egypt into the stratosphere. Let's say that. Not only did they dominate Africa, but they dominated parts of Asia, and they dominated a lot of the Mediterranean. So from the the delta in the south, they just went up the coast through Israel, through Syria, and up into Tarsus. I believe they went that far up. So yeah, they were doing a lot of things in that new kingdom. So that is the history, the physical history of Egypt. And let's get to scroll number 4. And what does scroll number 4 say? We're going to talk about another quote. Quote number 4 from scroll 4 to start it off: Burial in Egypt. When ye as men can learn that nothing but progress of the soul counts in the end, then truly ye are free from all bondage, free to work in harmony of law. That came from the Emerald Tablets as well. Why am I talking about that? Because we're talking about burial in Egypt, and this quote sets us up for the, the process of burial and freeing the soul from the body. That is the reason why I chose that quote to unpack scroll number 4, which is burial in Egypt. And I'm going to start with this scroll. Is the scroll of Ani actually grew out of long traditions of funerary inscriptions dating back to the Old Kingdom, like we just talked about, guys, about 2700 BC. And in the Old Kingdom, like I just said, the mastabas was that flat um, marble or stone, and then the pharaoh laid underneath that. And in that little tomb, the Egyptians used to write inscriptions on the walls. And the inscriptions, the oldest ones that we found, were actually found in the pyramid of Pharaoh Yunus at Saqqara back in 2345. But before that Egyptian temple inscription, the older pharaohs were they had physical script on the walls of their tombs so they can be guided into the afterlife. And it kind of continued into the new kingdom of how they were burying the pharaoh with inscriptions on the walls of his tomb. And I also want to say this too, guys. With this whole uh, Egyptian religion that was created, it really is based around the Great Nile River, because that is Egypt's life force and is still the Egyptian life force to this day. If you guys ever looked at a satellite picture of Egypt, there's nothing but desert all around it. But you see the sliver of blue and the sliver of green, and that is Egyptian life force. So that's why a lot of the Egyptian scroll texting that we're going to talk about today reflects a lot of Egyptian life, only because they knew even back in those days that, or centuries ago, that the Nile was their gift. The Nile is how they survived, and the Nile gave them all of the abundance that they were going to need, and it took them into the stratosphere, like I said, during the New Kingdom. So they really do give a lot of reverence to the Great River. And like I said, the Nile River is a huge influence. It shaped not only the physical life of the Egyptians, but it heavily influenced Duat. And Duat is the afterlife, or the netherworld, or the underworld um, in Egyptian culture. And they talk about the rise and the fall of the Great River, meaning that there's times a year where the river is high, and there's times a year where it's super low. So even in um, a lot of the Book of the Dead, there is a lot of talk about the river rising and falling. Animals were talked about. Agriculture was a heavy influence in Egypt. I know they had gold and other exports, but agriculture, just like today, is their biggest exporter of goods today. And they also had talked about boats to navigate the Great River. And they also um, looked at the cyclical movements of the celestial bodies, like the moon, the sun, different stars, planets, constellations in the sky, which led the thinkers to create ma'at, meaning when the Egyptian thinkers finally have the time to sit back and look at the sky, they notice that there's a law. They notice that there's a pattern. They notice that there's a movement of this earth, and that's where Ma'at was created from, was them knowing that uh, there was an order in this universe. Maybe they knew more, but that's initially how it all started. And like I said, the order of truth of this dimension and the way this dimension works, they figured it out centuries ago, and they're still teaching it to all of us today. Other great religions as well, but it stemmed out of Egypt. And like I said, speaking of the Old Kingdom, this script was strictly for the pharaoh, meaning the texts, like I said, were written to guide the pharaoh through the adventure of the underworld. Meaning, when we drop this physical body, a lot of the Egyptians were pretty much saying that it's new to us being in the astral form, and so to navigate that astral life after a long vacation from it, let's just say that, it's a little startling. So they gave the pharaoh uh, words and hymns and prayers to say, and these hymns and prayers established the pharaoh to spiritually take his place among the great ones for eternity. Meaning, with these inscriptions, the pharaoh was able to not come back. That was the goal of the Egyptians at the time. Was the pharaoh needs to say these certain things and read these certain inscriptions so he can evolve himself higher and higher and higher during his journey, so he won't have to come back, and he can live amongst the gods or for his eternal life. And that was the real meaning of this book. And like I said, the inscripted hymns, prayers, and spells warded off danger. So that's what I mean by when I started this episode was I realized that this is not dark magic. These inscriptions, these words, were to protect the ka or the soul. So it had a successful journey of transformation in the astral realm. And like I said, the early period was just for the pharaoh. And during the old kingdom became decadent and wealthy, which means that other high-ranking officials wanted the access to what the pharaoh was getting in the afterlife. So, high-ranking officials, and we saw that regional governors started using the script in their burial tombs. So that's what I mean, guys, by whatever the pharaoh was really a living god, and people really wanted access to what they were doing, what the pharaohs are doing. So that's why it was extended out to these different high-ranking officials, and that was in the old kingdom. Now, the new kingdom, they still kept it for a lot of these regional governors and high officials, but the middle kingdom came some changes. The inscriptions were transformed from the walls of the tomb to the scroll. So this is where we get the scroll transitions in the middle kingdom. And it was written on papyrus scroll, and the scroll was handwritten, no pictures, rolled up and placed in the coffin of the deceased. So they wanted the pharaoh to still have something on his body, somewhere on his mummy, maybe in his hand, to just again to guide him into the spiritual realm. And then the new kingdom, again, empire, very large. The scroll became mass produced. There was more expansion of use, meaning the wealthy used it, the high priest used it, and their families, and then the royal family members started to use these inscriptions and prayers as well. So, like I said, guys, it started off with just the pharaohs. It went to a few select people in the middle kingdoms, and then, like I said, the new kingdom, it took it to anyone who had enough money to pay for this was able to have access to the spells. And the papyri, not only was it written in script, but it was upgraded with pictures or illustrations. It was in color. As you guys saw in the beginning of this episode, those are all beautiful pictures from the scroll. There was black and red ink distinctions, meaning the black ink was telling the deceased what to do or what to say. And then the red ink was chapter headers, and then also things orally Ani had to say or the deceased had to say. And the reason why I said, I found this really interesting is because when I read this, I'm like, well, that's very similar to the way the Bible was written, is because a lot of the narrative is in black, but only when God or Jesus were speaking did we start seeing the ink turn to red. So again, I found that a very interesting similarity between, like I said, the Egyptian book and the Hebrew book or the Christian book, is that the red and black ink traditions are still being used today. And that was very interesting. That was an aha moment for me. And then also during the New Kingdom, the scroll of Ani, which is what we're going to talk about today, was produced from that age. And no quote for scroll 5, because scroll 5 is a very long um, scroll to unpack. So we're going to skip the, um, what's it called? Quote, and just get right into it. So let's unlock scroll number 5. Scroll number 5 is fun facts about the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead. If you guys are not familiar with history, the 1800s, 1800s was really Europe's expansion into colonial Africa, meaning the European powers were traveling south and they were carving up Europe. So if you guys ever familiar with World War I, a lot of fighting took place on the continent of Africa because of this colonial expansion period. What does that have to do with this book? It has a lot to do with this book. Like I said, during Europe's colonial expansion period, during a dig, and let me preface this too, guys. Today's archaeologists must have permits to go to Egypt and dig. Back in the 1800s, when this was all going down, there were no permits. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who could read a book or just read the Bible went to Egypt and started digging up stuff. And this is where we found this scroll. A guy named Richard Lepsius, a German guy, he discovered the scroll around 1842, and he titled it. He titled the scroll as the Book of the Dead. And if you guys are unfamiliar with that time period, everyone was obsessed with Egypt. Egypt was the fashion in Europe. Clothing was designed after Egyptian figures. Um, Artifacts were just leaving Egypt left and right. So were the scripts. They didn't understand what it was, but it was so beautifully done that these pictures and books were copied. And so to sell this book, the Europeans gave it its name, the Book of the Dead. Like I said, guys, this is another aha moment for me too. I always thought it was called the Book of the Dead, but to the Egyptians, it was a very different name. And with this Book of the Dead, this is where the dark magic came to hover over the book, as is something that's evil or dark or demonic. Just again, so we could so they could sell the book, and it worked because this book became popular in mystic circles. It often was, like I said, mistaken for dark spells, or people or the Europeans were using it for dark magic, and it got those or those secret societies. I'm sorry, started to use it for dark magic to bury the dead, and the Egyptian knowledge from long ago was just so mysterious to them. No one really understood its true power and its true light. That it was actually a book of light. It wasn't a book of dark. But like I said, the Europeans always put out a narrative and we all believe it. But I'm here to tell you guys that hopefully this can shift everyone's knowledge around that this is actually a book of light. It's not a book of darkness. And the fun fact about this all, put it all together, guys, the original name for this book by the Egyptians was Spells for Coming Forth by Day. I'm going to say that one more time because that was a big moment for me when I read about this, that it was called Spells for Coming Forth by Day. What does that mean? It means that these are all different spells chants for the Ka, or the life force, to have a safely guided journey that enables the soul to emerge safely from its tomb, or its dwelling place, the physical body's dwelling place, into a more perfected spiritual form. And when I was reading the book, I'm like, this is basically a story to help the soul resurrect. And the reason why I said resurrection is because I'm not saying that this is similar to the story of Jesus, but it has a lot of roots in the story. Meaning, I remember in the book of Mark, let's come to the Bible, how they were describing Jesus's the morning that he showed himself to the women, it was like I said, it was in the morning. Let's put it all together. Jesus came forth by day. It was in the morning. He appeared to Mary of Magdalene as a perfected form of a spirit. So what does that mean, guys? I'm trying to say is tying this or saying that there was some inception, the roots of how souls come forth by day, by resurrection, did I start to understand the similarities in what we really do as well. Like we was talked about in episode 22, keeping your mind in the Christ consciousness. Well, if we believe that there's Christ inside of us, guys, with the right um, living in Christ consciousness in the physical world can set you up to resurrect fully and evolve your spirit in the spiritual realm. So that's what I mean by I feel like the story again, because of the Europeans, the story got distorted into dark magics. But like I said, when I finally read the book and I remembered my teachings from the Holy Bible, was I able to put those two stories together and say, okay, the Egyptians are telling us that, like I said, with the right hymns and prayers, can we evolve ourselves into these into a more perfected spiritualized form that never comes back to this planet ever. You just live amongst God and live in His wisdom for a long time. Um, let's get into more of what I'm talking about with a perfected soul. How to come forth by day. I'm going to start with the first paragraph is Egyptians believed that there were individualized uh, parts of the human being, and those are seven elements. Again, guys, the seven elements that the Egyptians believed in are the same seven chakra wheels that the Indians believe. So it's like listen to me, guys. By combining texts, do we start to see the similarities in the pyramid cultures all throughout the world? They all say the same thing, that there's seven energy lines in this body, and the Egyptians felt the same way. Not felt the same way. They believed the same. Excuse me. This was called Kepuru, which is modes or manifestations of human existence. Meaning, when these seven energy manifestations disintegrate at death, the energy fades away, or there we go. It breaks up into smaller little parts. And I was going to go through all of them, but I don't think I need to. I think the only two we're going to highlight is the Ka and the Ba. The Ka and the Ba is part of those seven manifestations. And we're going to review the Ka one more time. The Ka is the life force or the spirit, like I said, guys, that lives inside of you, that lives inside of you. And then the Ba is your heart consciousness. That's the traveler, because the Ba really does travel between the physical and the spiritual world. That's why it's called. That's why you guys see a half human, half bird, or that's the only way the Egyptians could uh, picturize what we really are, was that they had to have a bird and a half human. But it's really just describing. It's a metaphor for what we really do. Meaning, like I said, guys, the Ba consciousness creates this body again, and it's tethered with the astral world. So that's to say, guys, when you combine the two together, you have a full experience. And again, hopefully this is breaking down Egyptian knowledge to all of you guys today. And like I said, guys, the Ka is your life force. And I'm going to say, in the book Coming Forth by Day, it says the Ka enjoys independent movement, meaning the Ka goes, it does its own thing, pretty much. It is free to do its own thing. It's free to move throughout any dimension it wants to go to. So that's what the Egyptians were teaching about what the Ka does. And in the tomb, or let's say at the time of the boss passing, the ka stays in the tomb with the body, and it enjoys all of the offerings and nourishment that is put in the tomb by the priest and by the family members before they seal the tomb for the deceased. So that's what the ka does. Now the ba, like I said, is oftenly shown as half human, half bird, only because, like I said, guys, it has 1 foot in the human realm, 1 foot in the spiritual world, or it flies between both worlds. And um, once a soul is evolved, can it visit the world by day and then returns to a tomb at night? So I'm going to add uh, a note into that. If you guys ever been to a medium or been to a spiritualist, they normally talk to the dead during the daytime. Now, that's very rare that they do it at night, but for the most time, guys, when you see these people, they're calling these spirits during the daytime. Why? Because if they were evolved enough, can you call them from the other side and they can appear to that medium, or even appear to you? A lot of people have a lot of times where they hear things during the daytime or things start to move. That's because some of these spirits are so evolved that they can show themselves in physical form, or they can start moving stuff in physical form if they haven't evolved uh, ka after this physical body drop. So that was another thing that wasn't in my show notes, but it came out again because I know or seen it or experienced it myself. And with everything we just talked about, guys, the 7 elements falling apart when the physical vessel drops away, mummification was born out of this knowledge of the 7 manifestations breaking apart. And mummification uh, was the catalyst to say, okay, if we preserve the body enough, we can keep the 7 manifestations together. And along with the preserved organs, like taking all the organs out, the deceased also carried the hymns, the prayers, the spells, also with their organs. It was able to give the deceased a full immersive experience, meaning that they can call in their 7 manifestations. They have their heart in hand, they have their kidneys and everything else in hand. And like I said, with these spells and prayers, they were able to evolve themselves into a divine spirit known as the Sa. That's another thing that I didn't know about. In Egyptian coming forth by day scroll was that this is what that's what mummification was really for. I always thought it was just to preserve the body, because of the climate out there, but there was a deeper meaning that I learned during this experience. This is why I'm still doing this show. I'm learning so much. That mummification was really more of a deeper spiritual level, was to keep the body intact as much as they could. So when the ka travels into the astral world, or the ba and the ka travel to the astral world, can it recognize its body and start performing different acts and speaking also in the spiritual world too? We're going to cover that too. Once all preparations are done, so let's say the physical body passes away, the ka sticks around for a while. It's not like it's gone off yet because it's still tethered to the body. And the reason why the Egyptians did mummification was because they wanted to keep the ka close to the body as they could. So they took the organs out, preserved the body. As they were doing the mummification process, spells, well, I say it, yeah, spells, chants, hymns, and prayers were said. And if you guys ever watched the documentary on Egypt, there's always trinkets and other little things, charms that are within the body, so the deceased can recognize their body when they come back. So, all that being said, guys, when everything is said and done, the funerary procession happens. They put the deceased into the tomb, and they leave the body alone. They seal the tomb up, and according to the book, this is where the adventure of the soul in Duat or the underworld, netherworld really starts, is when the body is placed in the tomb. The Ka can now come back to the body, protect the body, and the adventure can start. And it begins with the grand trial. I'm almost there, guys. Like I said, it's not gonna be a long episode. So that is scroll number 5. Let's get to scroll number 6. Let's unpack scroll number 6. Scroll number 6. Scroll number 6 is the Papyrus of Ani. Who the heck is Ani? That was my question, because I keep saying it. So let's get into who Ani was, and why was Ani's experience so impactful on coming forth by day. Ani, during his time when he was actually a real person, Ani the scribe, or Ani the person, Ani was a overseer of the double granary, and if overseer in the Egyptian language became a scribe. So pretty much, Ani was the one keeping tally of the granary levels, and when grains came in, he was the one writing it all down and keeping tabs of it for his great lord, Lord Taver. So that's who we see in the book, is Ani. And then let me see if I can show it to you guys. But I think I showed you guys him already. Yeah, this is Ani. That's Ani right there. You see his hands are up and exalted. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, that's Ani. And then he was also accompanied by, I don't know why I put that book down, but I did. I shouldn't have, because she's right next door to him. You see his wife right behind him a lot of the time. She is Tutu, and she was a chantress or chantress, so she chanted in the temple of Amun, or the Sun Temple in Egypt. And the papyri of Ani was discovered in the New Kingdom, which, like I said, guys, was the empire, and the capital was Thebes or Luxor. That the scribe was found. Sorry, the scroll was found, and they've dated the papyri material back to 1275 BC. So that was right in the smack dab middle of Egypt's golden extent of power. They were rich, decadent. The pyramids were doing their thing, emitting energy out. They were dominant in Africa region. They were dominant in Asia. They were dominant all across the Mediterranean. So this is why the scroll came out so perfectly well, is because it came from that high empire state in Egypt. And the scroll is actually, I didn't know this, it was actually 77 feet long. They only turned it into a book because they call them different plates, because they took pictures of it. But in its actuality, I think it's in the British Museum. It is, when they first rolled it out, it's about 77 feet long. It's pretty long. It's actually the longest manuscript found intact, meaning there's other scrolls that have been found in Egyptian tombs, but this particular scroll was the only one where it was still intact. They could still see all the pictures. They could still see all the inscriptions. And this is why the scroll of Ani was used in a lot of Egyptian books, like I said, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, is because they were able to pretty much read what the journey of the soul takes, and it wasn't in fragments. That's what I'm trying to get to. It wasn't in fragments. It was actually from start to finish, it was intact. So whatever tomb it was found in, they did a great job preserving it, to have the soul have a great experience. And the scroll of Ani actually contains 60 chapters. So that's why I said, guys, that's why I broke up the episode, because I want to talk about the journey, and if I put the journey into this episode, I would have 3 hours again. I don't want that. I'm gonna try to keep it short. So we're at an hour. Let's continue on. As you've seen in this whole episode, It's richly colored script, meaning it's in black and red, and the illustrations are beautifully done, meaning that someone took meticulous time to put this scroll together and write it out. Because you see everything from a small little reed to water to alligators, and other birds. It's just beautifully done, and the script is impeccable. They can anyone who read it at the time can see every single word and transcribe it perfectly too. That's what I meant to say as well. It showed various stages of Ani's adventure in Duat, meaning like the picture I just showed you when Ani's hands were exalted. That is the start of the scroll, meaning that he was beginning his journey with his wife Tutu. And then after that first plate, doesn't go into a different journey. It's a really wild journey. It took me a while to get through it because I was trying to figure out, you know, what they were really talking about. But once I, infused myself and thought of myself as Ani, the scribe, was I able to pretend as if I was, deceased, and I was started to read the script and started to read the scroll, and then I was just taken on an adventure. So that's how I really got through the book, was just evolving my mind into uh, if I was deceased and I just saw this for the first time, what would I be doing? And so that's how I was able to get the book, and hopefully I interpreted it for you guys a little better too. That being said, like I said, his journey started with, like I said, his exalted hands, and the ending of his journey, Ani became this evolved, spiritualized, perfect being, living a peaceful life amongst the gods and in the fields of peace, or the field of reeds. If you guys are maybe some of you guys have been to Egypt, I haven't been there yet, but anywhere along a river, I grew up in Sacramento, so I know this is very true. Reeds do grow in the shallower parts of uh, rivers, or maybe some medium shallow parts. And they were saying that there's an eternal life beyond the reeds, and that's where the journey of Ani ends. Is when he crosses the reeds, he's going into the spiritual world forever. So that's the whole point of the scroll: is to start at death, uh, exalted, giving prayer to the gods, and then after all the journey and the adventure ends, does Ani stop, the praises for most of the time, and he's just living amongst the gods because he's one of them now. So that was the whole theme of not the whole theme. That was pretty much the whole, uh, what's it called, story of Ani. And let's move on to the last one for today. Scroll number 7. Let's unpack scroll number 7. So let me just paint the scene again, because it's been a couple minutes since we talked about this. Um, where do I want to end up? The mummy is preserved. Let's say the physical body. The mummy has been preserved. The priests have said everything they want to say to the body, and the mummy is ready to go. The funeral procession has ended. Everyone's done crying, wailing, and all that kind of stuff we do as humans. That's all done. The priests put the body into the tomb. They say some more prayers. They leave the scroll with the deceased. They back away and what's it called? In honor of the deceased, and they close the tomb. And according to the book, this is where the journey, or the adventure, let's say that, actually begins. So the Ka back, the Ba is sitting there. And like I said, guys, this is where it begins, the trial. So let's unpack scroll number 7, which is the trial. And I will start with a quote from the Cometh Forth by Day scroll. It says, May no lies be spoken against me in the presence of God. Again, this came from the ceremony of the heart from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So I'm gonna say that one more time because I like the way that was said. May no lies be spoken against me in the presence of God. So what that scripture is even saying is pretty much saying the deceased is hoping that no lies, nothing else has turned up um, by the scribes of the gods or Thoth to prevent this soul from not progressing further into his journey. That's what that's really saying. So it's already setting us up for the trial. And for a moment, guys, to come into the grand trial, I want you to maybe close your eyes, try to envision yourself without this physical body, your light, your buzzing, because we do have a vibration of our cells, your cause moving around. So that's what I want you guys to do is just take a deep breath and try to envision yourself as Ani, or yourself without this physical heavy body. And this will start our adventure finally. It's been an hour. So, with that being said, guys, try to think of the trial the way it kind of goes down in this physical world where, everyone's assembling. It's a busy day. People are traveling from everywhere to come to the Hall of Ma'at, or let's say the courthouse, to be a witness to this trial. So there's, beings from all over the place. Same with, our courts. We have the jury, we have witnesses, we have the prosecution, the defense, we have people who just want to, nothing else to do, so they can come and look at the court case. So that's what I try to bring this into the modern world. Is this is what's happening on the other side, according to um, the cometh forth by day scroll, or the scroll of Ani. And with that being said, the grand courthouse is the Hall of Ma'at. Plate 1 and 2, like I just showed guys. Let me get to it again. I shouldn't be closing this book out. Yeah, this is plate 1. So plate 1 is where we see Ani and his wife standing in all white, as you can see. And do this. They're standing in white. Yeah, that's better. You guys hear me? They're standing in white, and what you guys see in the picture is that they are offering. Their hands are exalted, of course, because they're giving reference to the gods. They're offering wine, cakes, beef, fruits, and other goods to the gods. So they are already paying homage to God or the gods. Let me say that because I forgot there's a whole bunch of them. And they have presented them with the fruits of their labor from when they were physically alive. And now they're doing it in the spiritual realm with what was left in the tomb. They were feeding it to the gods. They're offering it to the gods. And or all of Egypt's abundance, let's just say that, is offered to the gods because they're giving thanks for living in a place where there was overabundance, and that's what they're giving to the gods. Ani, after that plate, he must sing a hymn, and the hymn really is him calling all of the gods. He calls in Ra. That's what I mean, guys. That's what I mean, guys. Like this whole entire script is Ani calling in all the gods. So this is all written on the scroll, old papyrus scroll, because he probably does not know all the gods, but does this hymn uh, tell him what to say, who to call, and these are all the gods that he's calling in. So if you guys see, most of them, all well, ones at the bottom have sun, meaning he's calling in the sun gods, and then he's calling in the other gods as well. So um, like I said, he's calling in Ra, which is the sun god. Ra is the preserver of the cosmic order and the continuity of life. He calls him in. He calls in Khepera, and she is the creator of the gods and is associated with the rising sun. So these are all ancient beings or ancient gods in their pantheon of gods. These are the older ones. And then he calls in Nut, the sky goddess. So she's the mother of Isis. And then Ani also calls in Horus, which is the son of Isis and Osiris. And then he also calls in Osiris, which is the son of the sky god Nut. And he's also now the lord of the underworld. So he's calling in all these gods to come forth. Ani also says, "Hail ye, gods of the temple of the soul, who weigh heaven and earth in the balance, and who provide uh, food and abundance of meat." What does that mean? Meaning that he's calling in the gods who watch over the heart, who watch over the soul. As we're down here, he's calling everyone in because he's now whole and complete, and he's ready to start his journey. This is what this trial is really all about. And he also hails in more gods and, like I said, other creators, or I could say other angels and other team members that surround us during our time. He's calling them all in. And he also calls forth Thoth and Ma'at into the hall. He recognizes that he also hails that Thoth and Ma'at are both recorders. And he also calls other gods to arrive by a boat from their dimensions. So this is why I threw in that part about our physical trials. Is like there's a lot of people coming in, and what Ani is doing is that he's saying these different words and hymns, calling upon these gods and angels and other spirits and the Holy Spirit and God to all come from their dimensions to be a witness to his trial as he's starting his journey. And that is what that is about. Now, plate three. Yeah, plate three is where I'll show plate two. It's a pretty one. This is plate two. So plate two is where Ani is met and his wife offer more offerings to the gods, and they were met by Isis and her sister. And then you guys see the Ankh of Life as well being held up. So that means that he has crossed over into the spiritual world. He has crossed over into the hall, and this is the famous scene that we always see in a lot of Egyptian texts. This is the grand trial, and we're going to break down what this all means. So, like I said, this is the weighing of the heart ceremony. This is the build up to what I've been talking about for a while. Who is present? We have Ani and his wife, Tutu. So we see them at the bottom. I mean, at the beginning of the plate. That's him and his wife. And they are standing in the double hall of truth. So all this inscription is a separation of a column, and then we also have a column separating them back here. So you can see the whole apparatus is blocked off because they want to make sure that the scales of truth and light are completely balanced from any outside interaction. And then the Ba, as you guys can see, is on the left hand side. And according to the cometh forth by day, the Ba is represented as one's consciousness. So I found that kind of interesting that, in this book, that the Ba turn into consciousness. So what does that mean? Like I said in the last episode, guys, your consciousness is here, but your heart consciousness is what you carry over to get weighed. So once again, guys, if you have a whole bunch of anger, depression, sadness, hatred, um, lust, envy in your heart at the time of death, your consciousness carries it through to get weighed, and that's what this trial is really talking about. And then and then we also see represented the suspended feather on the other side that Anubis is kind of hanging on to. That is truth, light, and wisdom that is balanced against your consciousness. So that's hopefully that is explaining in basic terms of what's really going on here. All this stuff is just metaphors of what's really happening once the physical body drops away. And then also, you guys see like all of this. This is a barge only because we see a plume in front of Horus. This is a boat. So, guys, like I said, the last 2 minutes ago, I talked about how he was calling in gods from their dimensions. This is the barge all the gods came in on. So, he calls them all in. They're on the boat. So that's where that comes from. So let's say they pull up to the courthouse all together. And Ani has provided them with more fruits of his labor from his physical life. And then we also see the ibis-headed being, which is Thoth, the Atlantean, the one that we keep talking about. He is the scribe of the gods, meaning that he does all the inscriptions for them. They're too busy creating, so they hired Thoth to do all of their scribing. So he's there with his tablet and his reed in hand, waiting for this trial to finally take place. He's ready to get this over with, so to say. And then we also have God Anubis. He is right here. And like we talked before, guys, Anubis is the protector of the deceased, meaning that he really does guide the deceased on their journey. He's with them most of the time. I mean, Osiris too, or Osiris, say that. People know him by that. Osiris is with him too, but Osiris is just there when he's greeting different gods, but it's really Anubis the one there protecting him. And he also is there for two reasons. He's there to assist in the trial of life or weighing of the heart. And then he's also there for the opening of the mouth ceremony. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next episode. There was a lot going on in that um, plate, the reason why I wanted to break it up. And then Anubis is there. And Anubis is also testing the tongue of balance. And I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but that little gem that's right there, that is a tongue of balance. And that is where, in the beginning of the scroll, I talked about, may no lies be spoken against me or in the presence of the Lord. This is that little device that will tell everything. And since we're in metaphors in scriptures a lot of time, or in these biblical books, there's always a metaphor. And the only way I could think of how to like describe it to you guys, of the way it was shown to me, was that little crystal turns on, and then your whole entire life starts to play. That's the way I, like I said, saw this in a dream experience or out of body experience, was that the whole projector was there showing your life, and that is the tongue of balance, meaning is speaking balance into the existence or showing it to existence. And this is where we start seeing the tug of war between your life and your consciousness and the feather of light and truth. And then we also have, like I said, the feather is suspended on the other side to balance out your consciousness. And we see an inscription above Anubis, his head, and it says, "O weigher of righteousness, to guide the balance, that it may be established." There's some bit of a translation issue, but what does that mean? It means the inscription for Ani to read is "Weigher of the weigher of righteousness, guide the balance so that this may be stable." And he's pretty much praying that this will stay like this the whole entire what's it called, trial. It won't be um, too heavy or too light. It should be right in the middle, balanced out. And we see a man standing. That is Ani's physical body, or himself, and that represents Ani's luck or destiny. Meaning, if Ani had lived out his destiny or his luck, this is the one looking Anubis right in the face as this trial is taking place. So he's making sure that his luck and destiny has been fulfilled. So that's who's staring at him. And then the man standing to the left of Anubis, we talked about that already. Above Ani's physical body, we see Ani and sitting as a sphinx, and that is signifying his birth, his place of birth, which was Egypt or Kemet. And then above that, we see the bird, the half human, half bird. That is Ani's soul. His ka is there watching it. So it's gonna. That's what I mean, guys. By like, it's a lot going on in here. So we have his ka here. We have his ba down here with his consciousness. So his ka is independently standing there watching this whole thing take place. And then, like I said, we have Thoth there ready to go to record the result of his trial. Oh, behind Thoth, we have this weird looking, like hippopotamus, weird creature, dog creature too. It's actually Amam or Amit, which is the devourer, meaning if the heart is heavy, the consciousness of the heart is too heavy, the heart gets tossed over here and gobbled up. And again, I feel like this is more metaphors for what happens. I feel like if the heart is too heavy, the consciousness gets devoured up and thrown into a different dimension. Now, these different dimensions could maybe you come back to Earth, maybe your consciousness just gets routed back through to another body, or perhaps your consciousness gets thrown into the lower dimensions. And this coincided with the out of body experience I had in July last month. While I was prepping for this episode, I had an out of body experience, and I was actually on a layover. I wasn't at home this time. I was on a layover, and the dream was it was weird. I started off. I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized that I was in the middle of a concert. So my body I was dreaming, and then my body rose up out of my bed. I mean, my ka rose out of my body, and it just turned and just dove out the window. And then, seconds later, I'm in the middle of a concert by a very popular artist. I'm not gonna say the name. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is cool. This is rad. This was going on, in the spiritual realm. And then a few moments later, the song plays again, the exact same song. And so I'm like, well, okay, I'll continue on. I'll keep partying down. I'll get the full song this time. The song finishes playing. The artist is done performing, and then she starts up again. And that's when I noticed I was in a different dimension, and the same people were dancing the exact same way. And the reason why I noticed I was in another dimension is because the artist was glitchy. So, have you guys ever seen like an old movie before on reels? Sometimes with the spin of the reels, it gets a little glitchy, it gets a little weird. That's a good way to explain how I realized I was in another dimension. And then other people around me were glitchy and foggy and coming in and out. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I am in a different dimension. Who are all these souls? And uh, one soul locked eyes with me, and we had like this telepathic conversation. I asked him, I'm like, where am I? And he's like, you're in one of the lower dimensions. He's like, I could tell you're real. And I said, well, how so? He was like, you're glowing. Um, and so he says, follow me. And in astral form, we both glide into a different part of the dimension. And the hotel was Art Deco, so it was a little older. And there was like this restaurant next door to it. And he's like, come with me to the restaurant. So we go into the restaurant and we sit down at a booth. And he told me to start looking around. And I started looking around at all the people, and people were just living out their existence the exact same way. It's like they would finish eating and start up again with the same plate. and someone else would be smoking again, someone else would be flirting with another, soul that they were tied to. And the whole place was just like this glitchy um, dimension. And he took me, he was like, follow me. And so we went to the elevator. The elevator stopped on every single floor, and every single floor had a different karmic vibe to it, to where, there were people doing drugs on one floor, living out their karmic um, uh, sentencing from their physical world. I saw another guy shooting up. That was happening on a different floor. I saw people hanging themselves, jumping out of windows, and this was on repeat the whole time. And as we're walking through these different hallways in this hotel, my guide was telling me, because there were a few times, like I said, I was watching these people live out their karma for this eternity, and I was getting a little nervous. And he noticed it. He was just like, "Calm down. They can't touch you. Uh, they know you're here, but they can't touch you." And he kept telling me that, because he's like, "You're living. You cannot be touched." So that's when I was able to just keep walking with him to experience these different dimensions. But lo and behold, I asked him. I said, why am I talking to you? Why are you my guide?" Um, he said something in different language I couldn't understand, but then he finally came into saying, um, "I wanted to share, to tell you, take this back to the physical world, that there are lower dimensions that souls live in if they don't pass uh, with a light consciousness, with a light heart." He didn't get into the trial. He just said a light consciousness, a light heart. Do these souls get kicked down into a lower dimension? And he told me also to tell everyone that these souls are waiting for bodies, which I found was a very interesting thing, because I always thought souls came from heaven, but he told me that they do come from heaven, but they also come from lower dimensions to live out their karma finally. And so he took me to another level. And then he said, "This is where I leave you," because he's like, "I have to return to the physical world myself." And so the dream dissolved. Oh my God, I'm feeling sensation on my back as I'm talking about this. The dream dissolved. I flew back to my body. Then I woke up and I'm like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So this was around like 3 o'clock in the morning. This all ended. So that being said, guys, this is why I want to do this show. This is why I want to talk about Ani's experience, because let's say, let's say a meet or is there or not. I just want to let you guys know that that's just a metaphor for when your heart and consciousness is heavy. Do you get kicked back, like I said, either through earth again, or you get kicked down into a lower dimension where you have to live out the karma repeatedly over and over again. So, again, guys, I want you guys to know how serious it is to start healing in your physical existence while you have this body. Now, am I saying that, you must do everything today? No, but at least start. Start somewhere. Start with someone. Start with yourself. Like I said in the last episode, observe your behaviors, observe your thoughts, observe your emotions, meaning to where you just step back, like I said, with Carl Rogers, and just observe with no judgment, no harshness to say, where is this coming from? Just sit with it for a while. Write down the emotion. Maybe later on, you can come back and look at what you wrote down and say, okay, now it's time for me to start tracing the genesis of why I hate this person, why I don't like this, why am I shouting at this person, why do I have a broken relationship with that person, why do I have a short temper, why do I have a short fuse, why am I bitter? So once again, guys, these are all start to I don't want to say start, but begin the process. Let's do that, to begin the process of being more evolved. Let's say that. So that's my experience and reason why I said I shaped this episode differently, because when I had that experience on a layover, did I come back? I wrote it down. I looked at it. I examined it, and this is what I was supposed to tell you guys today. Is like there's a truth to this. There's many dimensions, guys, and what the papyri of Ani is trying to do is get souls into the higher dimensions and stay there. Um, we don't have to travel down into the lower dimensions now unless, like I said, you're living out something karmic and you're just waiting down there forever, how long it is to get a physical body again. So hopefully that sparks everyone to start healing and truly start to heal in this physical body. So back to Ani. Let me get to page 21. Let me read that for you guys because Ani says a lot. And I was tired of writing when I was writing this out. And I'm like, let me just read it for them. Where do I want to start? All right, I think I found it. Okay, so it says Osiris, the scribe Ani. So a lot of time in the book, they attach Osiris to Ani, only tying in his divineness in with his physicalness. It says, "My heart, my mother, my heart, my mother, my heart, my coming into being. May there be nothing to resist me at judgment. May there be no opposition to me. May there be no parting of thee from the presence of him who keepeth the scales." So he's talking about my heart, my mother, meaning that he is talking to the person that created him, if not the mother of the gods. That his heart came into being that way. So he's already recognizing that his heart is tied to his mother, and his heart is what made him come into being. And he's also saying, resist the judgment, and may the scales keepeth, meaning may the scales stay balanced. Thou art my ka within my body, and mayest thou come from the place of happiness, which is I am advancing. So he's already praying that he advances and his soul goes into a place of happiness. And to skip down, because he says a lot, let's skip down to Thoth. It says, Thoth, the righteous judge of the great company of the gods who are in the presence of Osiris, saith, hear ye the judgment. So this is where the tongue of truth has been played. Ani's life has been played for everybody, and Thoth is the one now speaking. He says, hear ye judgment. The heart of Osiris hath in very truth been weighed, and his soul hath stood as a witness for him. It hath been found true by trial in the great balance, meaning Ani's heart has been found to be true light against the great balance. There hath not been found any wickedness in him. He hath not wasted the offerings in the temples. He hath not done harm by his deeds. He uttered no evil reports, while he was upon earth. So what is this saying, guys? The trial happened already. Like I said, this trial is really quick. His soul stood as witness, meaning you guys saw Ani's soul, his ka, watching this trial. And he found that his heart was true against the balance of Ma'at. And the wickedness, meaning there was no wickedness in his consciousness. He didn't waste temple offerings, meaning every offering that he gave to the gods during his lifetime was never wasted. It was recorded and taken in. And then he was no harm in his deeds in his life, meaning he didn't harm anyone in his lifetime. He wasn't yelling at people. He wasn't cursing at people. He wasn't fighting on people. He wasn't hurting anyone physically or emotionally. Ani's Ani's deeds were really fixated on the great Lord, and there were no evil reports uttered, meaning he didn't speak against anyone while he was on earth. So, what does that mean, guys? It means, like, again, his time on earth was recorded, and with this trial, Thoth is declaring to all the gods that Ani's heart was true and light against the great balance. And now he says, Scribe Ani, triumphant, is holy and righteous, hath not sinned, neither hath done evil against us, meaning that he hasn't done evil against the gods in his physical body. Well, yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about what that really says. But maybe it's tied to maybe he hath not sinned. Yeah, I kind of like that one a lot better. Let his heart not be given to devour and meat. May it prevail over him. Meat offerings and the entrance to, so he's also moving on to saying the meat offerings and the entrance into the presence of God Osiris shall be granted to him together with a homestead forever in the land. It was a different land, but land of reeds, as unto the followers of Horus. What is that saying? Thoth is announcing to the gods that were present at the trial. Ani doesn't have any sin in his consciousness, in his heart. He is good enough to pass to the next level, and he gets to meet the god Osiris, and he gets to access the underworld. So that's what I mean, guys, by your physical life here dictates what you're doing on that other side. And so now Ani has the green light from Thoth. He recorded the inscription in time, and he gets to meet Horus, which is going to be the next plate. This is this is actually the end of scroll number 7. So Ani's adventure begins. So that's why I said, guys, like the reason I wanted to break this up is because I'm already at an hour 38 minutes. So, like I said, Ani started with his hands exalted. He's called on all the gods. Everyone has beared witness to his trial. They found that his heart was true and light. No sin, no deeds. He didn't sin against the gods. Everything was perfect, and he passes the trial. And Thoth announces to everyone, Ani is good. He's a good guy. He has a good soul. He has a good consciousness. Let's let him through to the underworld, and this is where his adventure begins. So that is the show, everyone. I can't believe I actually got through it. So to sum up what happened, guys, like I said, we started the episode with scroll 1, which was my introduction. I had the questions that sparked this episode. That was scroll 1. So this is what hopefully that was tying in as above, so below, as within, without, as the universe, so with the soul. It's all the same, guys. It's all one. There's no distinction. And what that's saying is really telling everyone is when you start to realize that there's no distinction, the veil drops, and the astral world becomes your friend, and the physical world becomes your friend at the same time. So that's what that's what really trying to free people's minds to think about with that episode. We found out that this wasn't any darkness. In scroll 2, I talked about the pharaonic period of Egypt, how it began, the pharaoh. We have a polytheist religion, like we just talked about. Scroll 3, we talked about the 3 different kingdoms, well, 4 different kingdoms, and how the inception of Egyptian culture started, and then how we got to the scroll of Ani in its height of Egyptian culture. And then scroll 4, we talked about the burial, how burial started in Egypt and how it looked and what influenced the burial system. We talked about what the hymns, prayers, and spells warded off danger to the spirit in this adventure. It wasn't any dark magic. If you guys heard anything dark that I talked about today, let me know. But to me, none of this sounded dark. And none of this sounded like it was a spell. Everything I just said to me was pretty light and truthful, of what a soul possibly could do in the afterlife, or um, the beginning of its astral life. And we talked about how the three different kingdoms differentiated, or how different burial went down in ancient Egypt. And then we, like I said, we talked about the Book of the Dead, or spells coming forth by day. That's its official name. We talked about resurrection of the soul, how it was kind of similar to the Christian Bible, of when a soul goes to the afterlife, it evolves itself and comes back by day, and it shows people who they are by daytime. And according to the Egyptian text, they do it during the daytime and go back at night. I think the Christian text is a little different. And then both texts also say, if got at this part in two, that they evolve into the heavens for eternity, and they choose to return if they want to. That's also one would say too. Yeah, we went to go through how to come forth by day. We just kind of talked about that. And we learned that mummification came out of the concept of keeping the seven chakras of the body together, and to keep that energy there to preserve the body, so you can evolve into a divine spirit. And then we just talked about the scroll of Ani, how that was incepted at the New Kingdom. And then we just talked about the grand trial, about how the grand trial is really quick. Ani calls in the gods. Everyone bears witness to his trial of life. Thoth writes it down. Thoth even declares what happened. The outcome of the trial is written down in script, is said throughout the universe. So everyone knows that Ani is a good spirit. And that is what we just talked about, the scroll. So I'll be back again, guys, in a few weeks. I already written out plate 8. Plate 9 might take a little bit, because I want to reflect on what this all says. So, guys, thanks for paying attention. This was part 2, the grand trial, but cometh forth by day. So hopefully this can start you guys thinking, more importantly, how to use this information. What do I mean by that? Start, like I said, begin to lighten your loads. Begin to have self-reflection or contemplation in your life. If that's through meditation, through your own prayer. And I want to also say this too about prayer, guys. I think I talked about this in another episode. Begging to God, that's not a way to pray, guys. Real prayer is just honoring, of course, the Great Spirit, the Great Lord, and just talking in real terms, talking in real language to the God. When you step into prayer as a co-creator, I don't think I've ever talked about this. When you step into prayer as a co-creator, you stop the begging, you stop the scraping, you stop the please help me out kind of prayers, and you start evolving yourselves into Lord, I desire. Lord, instead of not want. You just command, let's say, knowledge. Lord, I desire knowledge. Lord, grant me. That's another word for it. I'm trying to search for it. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. That's another way to think about how to talk to the divine. Like I said, a lot of the time our language, guys, I mean, I know that God knows language, but wants and preferences, all that kind of stuff doesn't work with the gods. Try more direct language. And you have to feel it too, guys, when you pray. I forgot to tell that too. That's not only just a let's say throat chakra to use, but is something also to think about as well. Let's see what else. That's it, guys. Thanks for listening. So try that out as you are going about your day today, and your, I'm sorry, not your day, but also your weekend. going into your week. I think I'll be back at the end of August with part two of Cometh Forth by Day. Comment down below, guys. Let me know what you thought about this content. If it's speaking to you, not speaking to you, if it was too confusing, if it was you didn't really relate to the material. Yeah, just let me know in the comments. Share, like, tell people about the channel. There's so much more I want to talk about. So once again, guys, thank you for listening to what I had to say today. Once again, everyone, thank you. I appreciate everyone for being here, and I will see you guys on another episode of the Divine Lux Soul Podcast. Continue to stay curious, not only about yourselves, but curious about other people as well. So thanks again, guys. Have a lovely weekend. I will see you again.